Ho! that kind of fires
Well,
me up, gets me going nowadays.
all right. Well, joining us on the line today is a WWE Hall of Famer, a guy who literally could be one of the most iconic figures to ever step into the squared circle. And as he embarks now on a different kind of venture, we are so honored to be joined by the one and only, and everybody's going to say it with me when I do it, but a big ho, as the great Hacksaw Jim Duggan joins the two-man power trip of wrestling. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, my pleasure, and thank you very much for that introduction. That was great. But as you said, man, the first thing Hacksaw Jim Duggan has to do is give a big ho! Kind of fires me up nowadays, gets the blood flowing, gets the hair standing up, gets old Hacksaw ready to go. So many folks hear about my good friend Jake, and, the resurrection of Jake, and, of course, Scott Hall, and all these guys that had all this trouble. For me, it's been a great business. I've been doing it since 1979. I'm still out there doing stuff nowadays, and, I've been with my wife for over 30 years. I never had to go to rehab for booze or drugs, even though, hey, it was the 80s. I did a lot of both. I can't say I didn't do a lot of both. No felony arrest, few misdemeanors, but again, it was the 80s, and probably the most popular arrest in wrestling history, me and the Sheik. But overall, it's been a great business for me. So I put a kind of a positive look at wrestling instead of all that negative stuff you hear all the time.
Is it the larger-than-life characters that are missing from today's wrestling that kind of take away from the feel of us wanting the old-school wrestling to come kind of back into what we're watching today?
Yeah, I think that was a moment in time, the old WWF. That was just, Davey Boy, Dynamite Warrior. It was just a unique, very unique time, and I don't think it'll ever be matched. And a lot of folks are critical of the product, but, I was down in Orlando with WWE, and there was, 80,000 plus at the Citrus Bowl, so somebody's watching the show.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And actually kind of funny you say that because I guess the real last larger-than-life character to be in current WWE would have been The Undertaker, and you saw The Undertaker coming in through the front door, and now actually you being there, you saw him walk out the back door and kind of end his career. But if you can you comment on The Undertaker's retirement and being there, watching that, as like I said, you also saw him come in all the way back in 1990.
Yeah, I actually worked with Undertaker and Paul Bearer quite a bit when he first came in. Matter of fact, that's one of my highlight stories of my stand-up show, talking about what a stand-up guy Undertaker has been his whole career. Probably the best run, no, not probably, the best run of any wrestler ever. You might debate who's a better wrestler, this and that, but the guy that had the best run ever is The Undertaker. And it's hard to find somebody to say something bad about the guy. And I was privileged to be in the ring with a big guy in the early days, and when he was still learning his craft. And sometimes it could have been a struggle, but he developed into the best ever in wrestling. It was sad to see him go. I tell you, I'm sorry that streak. I'm like everybody else. I'm sorry the streak broke and all that stuff back in New Orleans. But yeah, there's really only one Undertaker, and I think there will only be one WWF time in wrestling. The product now is different, but still entertaining, and the guys are very respectful. I think they're more professional in our day. They may even be better athletes than we had in the WWF, but I don't think they're as creative and as unique as the guys in the backstage in the WWF show, it was a cast of characters, to say the least, with Iron Sheik sitting there and Junkyard Dog walking through. It was a unique dressing room, and that's why the stand-up does so well all over the world. Folks still remember that era and are curious about it.
Literally, we can't get enough of it. It's like every time we hear a story, every time we talk to somebody, it's always something new that puts a smile on our face because we thrive on that. We love that time frame. But you talk about stories with The Undertaker. You mentioned Andre the Giant. What is it putting together a show that you want to bring to the forefront? Is it the stories? Is it the fan interaction? What is the most that you get off on when you put these shows together and then watch it actually all go through as you're on the stage and you see that fan interaction?
Well, that's always been my highlight, my thing with the fans. I think that helped my longevity. Folks saw that it wasn't them putting the flag on Lex Luger and say USA. When I was out there waving that flag of our country and I was chanting USA, people knew it was coming from the heart. And that's why back in the WWF, which was my heyday, I wrestled DiBiase, Dusty, and Orton. But then I came back into WWE on a talent contract. I wrestled DiBiase's kid, Orton's kid, and Dusty's kid. I said, first I beat up the old man, then I beat up the kid. Ho! Starting to fire up now, brother. But no, I enjoy talking with the fans. That's why I like to have a meet and greet before the show, because, after the show, folks have stuff to do and stuff. So I'll be there before the show and talking to folks, taking pictures, and, it's a fun time. But, people ask me, don't you get nervous talking to folks? I said, it's like talking to a room full of old friends. I mean, the folks are all there are wrestling fans, or the majority of them, or at least curious about wrestling. And it's a receptive audience, and it's fun at this stage of my career to come out and have the place going ho and chanting USA, and it's humbling to be remembered this way.
Now, I got to ask this because, you make that great point about Luger being the USA guy and everything else. The fans have meant so much to your career, and it's funny. You can have one guy do one gimmick and fans don't react to it, but it's guys like you who have that charisma and the fans just get behind it. You just say ho, and you get 20,000 people chanting ho. What is it about Hacksaw Jim Duggan that has the fans, so enamored with him?
Well, I think it's just being genuine. Hacksaw is part of Jim Duggan. I mean, it's just an extension of my personality. And I saw it in another guy. I tell you, when I first met Daniel Bryan, I said, there's no way this kid's going to make it in our business. There's not a chance. But there's the guy that had the work ethic, the desire, the hustle, and he made it work, and he was genuine, and the fans got with the yes, yes, yes. It was kind of like a ho, ho, ho. I saw a lot of the genuineness in that young man that helped me for 30-plus years. Because, that's one thing excuse me, a lot of folks don't appreciate about wrestling, is how competitive it is. I do autograph sessions and stuff, and the kid will come up and say, I want to be a WWE wrestler. And I use Daniel as an example. I said, chase your dreams, because who would have ever thought Daniel Bryan would have made it? But realize there's 1,500 NFL football players playing this year. There's 700 NBA basketball players. There's maybe 100 WWE wrestlers on contract. You got a much better opportunity to play in the NFL than you do working for WWE. It's television. It's more competitive than sports, and people don't see it that way.
Absolutely.
And it's not just kids from our country. You got guys from Japan, Europe, Australia. Everybody is after my job. Where's my 2x4?
Definitely, and it's so true with Daniel Bryan. The yes got over like ho got over. Where did you get that from? Where does that come from?
Well, I joke. I said, one time I was out there with my 2x4 and I got a big giant splinter in my thumb, and I went, oh. No, I don't know. It's kind of like Flair's Woo, or even One Man Gang had a yell going for a while. It was just a way to, back in the Mid-South when I really started to develop the Hacksaw character, it was just a way for me to interact. I was a heel, actually. I was interacting with the fans. Yelling at them. They started yelling back, and when I made the switch, when DiBiase hooked up with Skandar Akbar, I started carrying the American flag, and the whole just stuck with it.
Mid-South, like you mentioned, so many great guys. In passing, we almost mentioned like DiBiase, One Man Gang, who really cut their teeth, and yourself cut your teeth in Mid-South. What was it like in that territory? Because going back and watching it, Dundee's booking is awesome. Bill Watts, his creation, it's awesome. It's like one of those territories you just go back and watch, like, wow, this had so much influence on professional wrestling, and maybe a lot of fans don't know it.
No, well, I think the hardcore fans, and of course the library that the WWE network has opened up my generation of guys to a whole new. I have a whole lot of young kids come up. Oh, I love the Hacksaw on the show or Legend House. The network is great, and they get all the libraries. But I don't know what percentage of WWE Hall of Fame guys came through Mid-South, but an awful lot of them. It was a great training territory because you'd wrestle 9-10 times a week. A lot of traveling, but, we were all a bunch of young guys, and you go to Shreveport and you'd do a show and you'd party. You drive down to New Orleans, you'd do a show and you'd party. Go over to you. I mean, we were just a bunch of young guys having fun on the road. But there was not only a great place to learn to wrestle, but Bill Watts was very critical of your interviews. So you learned to talk on the microphone too, which is a lost art nowadays. But he would not have you do one generic interview. He would have you do interview after interview till you got it right. And an example of, going up to WWE, I went up and I had this young man come up and go, Hacksaw, here's your verbiage for your interview. And I look at him and I'm looking at the piece of the paper. And I'm like, how's some punk kid going to tell Hacksaw Jim Duggan how to cut his interview? And they're like, well, this is what we want you to say. And I'm like, well, send me my check, okay. But I have a whole new respect for those guys that deliver lines and actors. That's a lot harder than it looks, because I was very robotic trying to deliver lines where instead of saying, go out there, be Hacksaw and cover this base, boom, I go out. I was losing all my mannerisms, my hacksawness, trying to remember lines. So, but that's a new generation and a new wrinkle to the business.
Definitely different, and it's great that Watts kind of was, giving you guys a great place and to kind of learn your craft and learn the promos and stuff like that. But with Mid-South, some of those feuds were just amazing. Your feud with Ted DiBiase, 1985 feud of the year. We had Ted on about not too long ago, and he said the best gimmick match ever was your Loser Leaves Town match versus him.
Oh, yeah, inside the steel cage with a coal miner's glove, dressed in tuxedos. And I always said, Ted DiBiase may be the greatest technical wrestler in the sport, but he can't fight a lick. And when you're in the ring with Hacksaw, it's going to be a fight, DiBiase. But it was great because Teddy is a very GQ kind of guy. He's like Flair. He could be on the road for a week and he still have creases in his pants, and, Teddy was really debonair. That $1 Million Man gimmick wasn't a stretch for him. Where, I'm in a pair of sweats and sneakers running through the airport. And so it was a great contrast, and he was a technical wrestler. I was a brawler. People always say, well, Hacksaw, what's your favorite move? Well, I kick and punch. What are you talking about? But so we had a great feud down there, and we did huge business.
Oh yeah, that feud is awesome. If anybody wants to see it, go out of their way to watch that Loser Leaves Town match. And like you said, you're a brawler, and you started carrying that 2x4. Where's the idea come, and where's the inspiration come for carrying that awesome 2x4, which is so definable with you today?
Oh, I tell you, it's great. I do a lot of Comic Cons. I sign a lot of lumber. Folks bring in a lot of 2x4s. We have them for them. But I came back. I started off as a big Jim Duggan. That didn't work. I wore a mask for a while. That didn't work. I wore fur for a while. That didn't work. So after bouncing around from Texas to New York to Hawaii to Georgia to Florida, when I went to the San Antonio territory, that's where I developed, I changed my name to Hacksaw, from Wild Man Duggan to Hacksaw Duggan. I dropped the fur and just went to Hacksaw. But anyway, as a heel working with Bruiser Brody, who was very influential in my career, Brody and Buck Robley, who are both dead, as many of the boys are. But anyway, just getting back and forth from the ring in West Texas was very dangerous. It was long before sports entertainment. They had a waiver. If you wanted to try one of the wrestlers, you signed the waiver. You got up in the ring, and you could try us. So we'd have every local tough guy coming in the ring with you. So it was a whole different business. So just getting back and forth from the ring was dangerous. People spit on you, and they kick you and punch you. Some guys got stabbed and maced and stuff. So I'm sitting back in the dressing room all covered with loogies and bruises, and Brody comes in. He looks at me, and he goes, Duggan, he says, if you carry something to the ring, carry something you can use. Forget all those feathered boas and sequin robes. And shoot, I just looked down, and there was a 2x4. I said, well, here's a piece of wood. And I went out yelling, waving that piece of wood. It was like parting the Red Sea. Them people scattered. They were scared to death of me. Nobody punched me, kicked me, or spit on me, and I've been carrying it ever since.
That is awesome, and it's so definable, and it's so great that you, like you said, like you go to the autograph signings and stuff, and you have it. I actually have one from a couple of years ago. You signed it for me. It's awesome. It's unbelievable. It's like, wow, I have a 2x4.
It's
a Duggan.
Yeah, it's a nice little keepsake, and of course, I used to travel, with Jake all the time, and I'd walk into an arena, and I said, could somebody find me a 2x4 and get him a 10-foot python? He had to drag that snake around wherever he went, and I could pick up a board. I've been known to be out back breaking up a pallet trying to get a piece of wood before a show before.
Now, true hardcore fans, they remember Hacksaw from Mid-South. Obviously became a star there, but obviously so many, some of the, regular fans, I guess you could say, know you from the WWF, know you from your time with Vince Jr. Do a lot of people still talk to you about winning Royal Rumble in '88 and kind of how big the Royal Rumble has become? Your name is attached to that Royal Rumble forever?
Yeah, that's obviously the huge feather in my cap. So I was never, world champion or tag team champion or intercontinental champion. I was lucky to win a match, but to win that Royal Rumble, yeah, it's definitely a trivia question that people always get right. It seems that it keeps my name out there, and of course now this 30-year coming up, it's going to be a big one, and it's exciting to be part of it. And I don't think, back then people said, well, what you think? And I said, well, back then we did the show. We got in the car, we drove off, and we did another show. And nobody realized how big the Royal Rumble would become, or nobody would realize how big the actual, WWE would become. Since I've been wrestling, and most of it with WWE, I've wrestled in every state in the Union, every province in Canada, in 30 different countries. It's amazing the appeal of wrestling around the world. I always joke with the NFL guys at charity golf tournaments and stuff. I'm like, world champions. Where in the world have you boys been?
That's a great point. Yeah, the world champions of a very small geographical region, at least. But, you talk about the WWF era. You might be, for the Royal Rumble, you might be the most surprise entrance also in a Royal Rumble. But your day, you said tough guy all the time, was loaded with tough guys, whether it was Haku or whether it was Andre or whether it was a guy like Bad News Brown. You'd always be in there with some of the toughest and really most, aggressive guys that Vince had. But are there any guys that you really liked working with or had the misfortune of not wanting to work with because of that, stiff and rough and tumble nature?
Yeah, it was a snake pit of tough guys, that dressing room. There wasn't hardly a weak link in there. If there was, you would get ate up. Everybody knows anybody could beat anybody on pretty much any given day if you got the first one in. So there was that mutual assured destruction. Nobody was going to walk away clean. And that's why everybody got along in a very high pressure situation. Of course, there was a few flare-ups, but relatively not many considering all the deal. But, Haku has, I've known Haku for 35 years, and he's noted as one of the toughest men in our business. Of course, and, Barbarian's right up there with him. But anyway, to work with, I enjoyed DiBiase. I think any of the second-generation wrestlers, guys like Kurt Hennig, Jake the Snake, DiBiase, guys who grew up in the business are just a little more polished. They understood. I didn't start wrestling when I was 25. Coming out of a football background, I really wasn't a big wrestling fan growing up. So when I first started wrestling down there with Fritz von Erich at the Sportatorium in Dallas, they're like, Big Jim, this guy's going to beat you in 12 minutes. And I'm like, well, shit, I can beat him. I know I can beat him. Of course, the guy I'm working with is like, oh, Jesus, help me. So funny, I saw Mr. Wrestling number 2 at a wrestling convention. He used to wear that white mask. And when I first started working, I didn't know what I was doing. Boom, and I potatoed him hard. And there was a little red dot in the mask, and it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Pretty soon the whole mask was all blood. So I seen Wrestling 2 at a convention. I said, 2 has gone full circle. I said, now I got the young guys beating the hell out of me.
That's awesome.
I still do a few indies. I do some stuff with WWE. This is, at 63 years old, I have no physical attributes left, but I can still entertain a crowd. And it's more to being out there and taking bumps back and forth than, telling the story, having a little ring presence, interaction with the fans. And, there's more to the show. But, I do the indies, and the young kid comes up, 6'5", 300 pounds, 25 years old. He's like, Mr. Duggan, are we on TV tonight? I'm like, oh, I hope not, son. Try to take it easy out there, kid.
Yeah, when you walk into a locker room, I'm sure it's like almost a hero worship now because there's so many the kids, the generation like us who grew up watching you that now idolized you for so many years, and they get to work with you and look across the ring at you. It's a little bit of stars in the eyes, I think, when they see Hacksaw Jim Duggan standing across the ring.
Well, I enjoy doing the indies because they're the kids that love the business. They have regular jobs. They're spending their money on their gimmicks and their gear. They're taking a chance on hurting themselves out there, breaking their necks in high-risk moves in front of, relatively, good crowds at high school gyms, National Guard armies around the country. There's a lot of good independents all around the country. And then there's some decent, like a Tommy Dreamer's deal or Big Time out of Boston. There's some other companies that stand head and shoulders above the smaller indies. But even, I was just with a show in Little Rock, Arkansas. They probably had, 600 people in a building for 500 people. Everybody in the place was chanting USA. People say, Hacksaw, you get tired of it? I said, tired of it? It's my life's blood, standing out there in front of those folks, everybody yelling and cheering. It's great to do it, and it's great to see the young guys that love the business that are fighting the odds to get that Daniel Bryant-type break. Because, like I said, you got a better chance of playing in the NFL than being a WWE wrestler.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt, 1,000%. When you talk about the WWE wrestlers and when you think about your era, too, the funny thing, and we're tying it back to Mid-South a little bit, you can kind of run down the Mid-South crew. You look at, guys like in the Rat Pack, you, DiBiase, Matt Bourne, and then even going a little bit further, One Man Gang, Butch Reed. All these guys that were with you in Mid-South were also with you then in the WWF after Vince kind of, took over the territories. Was that kind of cool for you to see all those guys who had made the Mid-South territory what it was now being under the Vince umbrella, where obviously that's where you guys then became those huge, superhero-like personalities because you had that marketing machine now behind you?
Well, we're all close down there. We did a lot of traveling, and WrestleMania started, and Junkyard Dog, he came up for WrestleMania 1 to WWE. WrestleMania 2 came around, Jake the Snake went up for WrestleMania 2. Jake calls me, he says, Duggan, you need to get your butt up here, man. So, boom, I gave Vince a call. I came up for WrestleMania 3. But I think people just saw it as a business and an opportunity to make more money, and you could see the writing on the wall that the WWE was going to be the powerhouse company. And so that was Vince's game plan, to go around to the small territories, get the top talent, and bring them up to WWE and take off and be a global power.
Yeah, and that it was. And this is a very nerdy question here. I always wonder now, WrestleMania 4, you and Ted DiBiase were an opening round match, and to have your blood feud, what it was in Mid-South, be the opening round match in a WWF tournament, did you guys kind of laugh at that? That you guys, you closed your feud in the biggest way possible in Mid-South, and Vince had you guys in a championship tournament, but as the first match on the card. Is that something you guys kind of, chuckle about, that Vince didn't always accentuate those other territories? He kind of made his own spin on what everybody was doing?
No, I at least myself, I don't know about Teddy, but no, I was, just moving on. Glad to be part of the big show and being a part of WrestleMania. And what had happened in the past, had come and gone. So, I didn't look at it that way. I just looked at it as an opportunity to shine on further. Don't worry about the past, brother.
And then obviously you get to basically tease the little feud with Andre there, and then eventually, like you said, you got to work with Andre all those days in a row. What was it like on the road with a guy like that? Obviously he was good friends with you, but there's some stories of him not liking some people and him putting down a good amount of beer. Yeah,
I mean, Andre, of course, he was a giant. The Big Show is a well-proportioned big man. I tell folks, if you've seen the movie Princess Bride, perfect casting. They need a giant. They got Andre. It was he was a different kind of. But he could also be a very lonely man. I mean, being that big is very hard. You can't fit in the showers. You can't fit in cars. You sit on toilets. Sometimes they break. I mean, a tough life for a big man. So he could be a lonely guy too. And but also he drank a lot. But he grew up in France drinking all the time anyway. So. But I had a good relationship with Andre. Actually, I worked with Andre very early in my career under a mask over in Hawaii. As guys in the old WWF would go to Japan and work, they would stop back in Hawaii and do a show for Peter Maivia, the High Chief, the Rock's grandfather. And I was working for him, and so I got a chance to work with all the top guys. You know, I got crushed in 2 minutes, but you know, so I had a rapport with Andre before I met him again in WW.
Do you have a couple matches that stick out to you as some of your favorites? I know there's been so many great ones, but any real other matches kind of stick out?
Oh yeah, without question. Excuse me. As you were saying earlier, Royal Rumble. That's what most folks remember. But what's most memorable for me personally was, you know, I grew up in Glens Falls, New York, up above Albany, up in the Adirondack Mountains, upstate. And so as a kid, my dad would drive me down to New York City, me and my 3 sisters, and we'd go to the circus at Madison Square Garden. You know, so as an adult to drive up in front of Madison Square Garden, see Hacksaw Jim Duggan versus Andre the Giant. I mean, it was a thrill of I got goosebumps right now telling you about it. It was a thrill of a lifetime. You know, and they're in front of over 20,000 people with a giant, and yeah, it was a great night in my career.
Awesome career, awesome. You know, to look back at a larger-than-life guy like Andre and a larger-than-life guy like yourself. Besides Andre, would it be Ted DiBiase as your favorite opponent ever, or would it be One Man Gang? Who are some of your favorite opponents that you've had in your career?
Well, yeah, Teddy, of course, was good. Me and Gang, we had some battles, I tell you. Sawyer and I, we didn't get along with each other. You know, that was at Mid-South territory. We chopped a lot of meat down there. You know, my character evolved over the years. Or at one point when I was a king of wrestling, I was really silly. You know, I had the cape, the crown, the flag, the board, the thumb, the tongue, the hoe, and the crossed eyes, you know. So I went from early in my career to chopping meat and, you know, just beating the hell out of each other. So I realized, well, if I want longevity with my body, and that's why I can still walk. You know, you see Mick Foley, one of probably a great talent, but the guy's so broke up. He's 12 years younger than me, you know, and he has trouble walking. I tell the young guys there's life after wrestling. So, you know, you don't see, never saw Hacksaw very much up there on the top rope. Never see me on the second rope, I don't think.
Now, you've been obviously everywhere. We didn't even mention WCW, but obviously huge run in WWF, New Japan, the old WWF with Vince Sr., but was Mid-South your favorite territory to work, or was it for Vince Jr. in the WWF?
It was 2 different type territories, really was. You know, Mid-South was a fun territory, a lot of fun. A stiff territory, you know, you lost a bar fight, you got fired. Like I said before, we're all single guys. You know, Ricky and Robert, Terry Taylor, Magnum TA, One Man Gang. I mean, Jake the Snake, Junkyard Dog. We had a great group of guys down there. Ricky or Sean and Marty. You know, I mean, it was unbelievable the crew we had, and that was a lot of fun. And of course, WWF was a different level. I mean, people always try to compare you to a sports team. I said, no, you were like a rock and roll band. I mean, it was. You'd be on a Learjet, fly to Paris, boom, do a show, fly to London, boom. You'd be out at Stringfellows in London partying with Mike Douglas and Grace Jones and movie stars, politicians, fly to New York, and then next night you'd be in Minot, North Dakota. You'd be like, what the hell?
We'd like to end it with this great kind of introspective question, and that is, when you look back at your career, and obviously you still do independent shots here and there, but what is the legacy of Hacksaw Jim Duggan left in professional wrestling?
I just hope my rapport with the fans. I mean, like I said, I was just at an appearance in Las Vegas at a trade show, and I'm sitting there, and there was a line, and you could see this one guy who's back of the line. He's a big guy, rough-looking, tough man. He waits his line, he comes up, he grabs my hand, he shakes my hand. He got real hard, calloused hands. He looks me hard in the eye. He goes, Hacksaw, me and my dad, we used to watch you wrestling, and it's humbling to be remembered the way I am, and I can't tell the folks how much I appreciate it.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates.